When I woke up in that hospital room, the first thing I noticed wasn't the pain, it was the silence. No footsteps, no whispered voices, no sign that my son or daughter had ever been there. Just an empty chair beside my bed and a hollow feeling I couldn't explain. Then the nurse walked in, hesitated, and slipped a folded note into my hand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He told me to give you this. Only if they left you alone." My fingers trembled as I opened it because I recognized the handwriting instantly. It belonged to Ethan Hayes, the one man my husband swore we should never trust. If this moment caught your attention, I'd really love to hear from you. Have you ever felt abandoned when you needed someone the most? Tell me where you're watching from and what you would have felt in my place. And if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep sharing these moments together. My name is Laura Hayes, and until 8 months ago, I believed I understood my life. I was 63 years old, recently retired, after more than 3 decades as an elementary school principal in Cleveland, Ohio. I had spent most of my adult life taking care of other people, children, teachers, parents, and most of all, my own family. Structure, responsibility, and trust were the pillars I built everything on. Or at least that's what I thought. Then my husband Michael died. Even now, saying his name feels like pressing on a bruise that never quite fades. Michael and I had been married for 40 years. We met when I was just 21, and for most of that time, I believed we had the kind of steady, dependable love people quietly envy. Not dramatic, not perfect, but solid. When he passed, something inside me collapsed in a way I wasn't prepared for. Grief didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly through the empty side of the bed, the untouched coffee mug on the counter, the silence in the evenings where his voice used to be. I stopped sleeping well. My appetite disappeared, and without realizing it, I started leaning more and more on my children. Ryan, my son, was the first to step in. "Mom, you don't need to handle all this alone," he told me one afternoon, standing in my kitchen with his arms crossed in a way that reminded me so much of his father, it almost hurt. "Let me take care of the bills for a while." At the time, it felt like relief, a kindness, something a good son would naturally offer. Emily followed not long after. "You've been through enough," she said, sitting beside me on the couch, her hand warm over mine. "Let me help organize Dad's paperwork. There's so much legal stuff, it's overwhelming." And she was right. There was a mountain of it. Insurance documents, retirement accounts, property taxes, medical bills from Michael's final months. I remember staring at it all one evening, my vision blurring, my chest tightening, and thinking I simply couldn't do it alone, so I didn't. I handed pieces of it over to them, first small things, then bigger ones. Access to accounts, copies of documents, eventually even passwords. At the time, it felt like trust. Looking back now, I wonder if it was the first mistake. At first, everything seemed normal. Ryan would update me occasionally, short, efficient summaries about bills being paid or accounts being reorganized. Emily would bring folders and reassure me everything was under control, but slowly something shifted. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started with little things, answers that felt too vague, conversations that ended too quickly. "Don't worry about it," Mom, Ryan would say whenever I asked for details. "It's handled. Handled." I began to hear that word more and more. Handled, managed, simplified. It was always framed as something for my benefit, less stress, fewer responsibilities, peace of mind, and for a while I accepted it. Because grief makes you tired in ways people don't talk about. It dulls your instincts. It makes you grateful for anything that feels like support. But then there were the moments I couldn't ignore. Like the afternoon I walked into the living room and overheard Ryan on the phone. His voice dropped the second he saw me. "Yeah, we just need a little more time," he said, quickly turning his back to me. "She's not asking too many questions yet, not asking too many questions." At the time, I told myself I must have misunderstood. Another time, Emily came over with a stack of papers and asked me to sign something. "It's just a formality," she said with a quick smile. "Nothing important, just makes things easier if anything comes up." I remember holding the pen, hesitating for just a second. "What exactly is it?" I asked. Her smile didn't falter, but something in her eyes shifted just slightly. It's standard mom. You trust me, right? And of course I did. Or at least I thought I did. So I signed. That became the pattern. Questions met with reassurance. Concerns brushed aside with gentle insistence. Everything always framed as being for me. And yet, beneath it all, there was a growing unease I couldn't quite name. It sat in my chest like a quiet warning I kept choosing to ignore. The day I collapsed started like any other. I woke up exhausted even after a full night's sleep. My head felt heavy, my thoughts slow. I remember standing in the kitchen staring at the coffee maker, trying to remember if I had already turned it on. That frightened me more than I admitted. Later that morning, Ryan came by unannounced. He didn't sit down, didn't ask how I was feeling. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started talking almost immediately. We should probably think about next steps, he said, long term. I frowned. Next steps for what? For you, Mom, he replied like it was obvious. Your care, your situation. It's not really safe for you to be here alone anymore. Safe. There was that word again. I've been managing just fine. I said, though, even to my own ears, my voice sounded weaker than usual. Ryan sighed the way people do when they think they're being patient. We're just trying to make things easier, he said. Less stress, more support. Emily arrived shortly after, and the conversation shifted, but not in a way that reassured me. They spoke around me more than to me, about schedules, about arrangements, about options. At one point, I caught a phrase that made my stomach tighten. If we get everything in place now, it'll be smoother later. Everything in place. I don't remember what I said after that. I remember the room feeling smaller, the air heavier, my heart beating faster than it should have, and then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was opening my eyes in that hospital bed, alone. No Ryan, no Emily, no familiar voice telling me everything would be okay. Just silence. And now sitting there with that folded note still trembling in my hand, I felt something shift inside me for the first time since Michael died. Not grief, not fear. Something colder. Because for the first time, I wasn't just asking what had happened to me. I was starting to wonder why. I stared at the note for what felt like an eternity before I finally unfolded it. My hands weren't just shaking, they were betraying me. There was a stiffness in my fingers, a hesitation I couldn't explain, as if some part of me already knew that once I read those words, there would be no going back. The paper itself was simple, slightly creased, folded twice. But the handwriting, I would have recognized it anywhere. Ethan Hayes. For 12 years, I had trained myself to forget that name, to push it out of conversations, out of memories, out of anything that might remind me of the fracture that tore my husband's family apart. Michael had been firm about it, unyielding. Ethan is not someone we can trust, he had said over and over again, and the more distance we keep, the better. I believed him. I stood beside him, and eventually I stopped questioning it. But now, here it was, his handwriting unmistakable, slightly slanted, careful in a way that always made his words feel deliberate. I swallowed hard and began to read. If you're reading this alone, Michael was right. My breath caught in my throat. Do not sign anything. My grip tightened on the paper. Do not go home with them. A cold sensation spread through my chest, slow and heavy. Ask for Clare, that was it. No explanation, no apology, no details, just a warning. Short, direct, final. I didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until the room seemed to tilt slightly and I had to force myself to inhale again. Michael was right. About what? And why would Ethan of all people be the one delivering that message? My mind raced, trying to piece together something, anything that made sense, but nothing did. Not yet. A soft knock at the door pulled me back. The nurse from earlier stepped in again. She was in her early 40s, maybe, with dark hair pulled back neatly and a calm, practiced expression. But now that I looked closer, there was something else there. Something cautious, almost watchful. I glanced down at the note in my hand, then back at her. Clare. I said, my voice barely steady. She froze. It was subtle, but I saw it. The way her shoulders stiffened just slightly, the flicker in her eyes before she could mask it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped further into the room and quietly closed the door behind her. Yes, she said, lowering her voice. That's me. My heart began to pound harder. I held up the note. He told me to ask for you. Claire's gaze dropped to the paper and something in her expression shifted, not surprise exactly, more like confirmation, as if a possibility she had been waiting for had just become real. She pulled a chair closer to my bed and sat down. Mrs. Hayes, she said gently, before I say anything else, I need to know, are you alone? I blinked at her. I woke up alone. She nodded slowly as if that answered more than I had actually said. Has your son or daughter been here yet? She asked. No, I replied, not since I woke up. Claire let out a quiet breath and I could see the tension settle deeper into her face. Then I think she said carefully, It's time I give you something else. Something else. A ripple of unease moved through me. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs and pulled out a small envelope. It was plain sealed and slightly worn like it had been carried around for a long time. She held it for a moment before placing it in my hand. This was left with me, she said, about 6 months ago. 6 months. That was 2 months before Michael died. My chest tightened. By who I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew the answer. Your husband, she said softly. Michael Hayes. The room seemed to go very still. I stared at the envelope in my hand, my thoughts suddenly scrambling to catch up with everything that was happening. He gave this to you, I whispered. She nodded. He came in for an appointment. Nothing serious at the time, but before he left, he asked to speak with me privately. Why you, I asked. Claire hesitated for a fraction of a second. Because I used to work at the outpatient clinic your husband visited regularly, she explained. He trusted me, said I was discreet. Discreet. That word sent a chill down my spine. What did he say, I asked. Claire's eyes softened, but her voice remained steady. He told me that if you were ever admitted here under certain conditions, specifically if you were brought in suddenly, and if your family wasn't present when you woke up, I was to give you this envelope. My fingers tightened around it. And the note I asked. That came later, she said, about 3 months ago, from Ethan. My head snapped up. You've been in contact with him, I asked, unable to hide the disbelief in my voice. She nodded again. Only briefly. He said your husband had asked him to follow up, that if anything happened to you and the situation matched what Michael feared, he would make sure the message reached you. What Michael feared, the words echoed in my mind. Fear wasn't something I had ever associated with my husband. He had always been the steady one, the calm one, the one who believed that everything could be handled with patience and quiet strength. But now I was hearing that he had anticipated something so specific, so serious, that he had left behind instructions, contingencies, warnings. I looked down at the envelope again, my pulse racing. What's in it, I asked. Claire shook her head slightly. I don't know. He didn't tell me. He just said it was important that you receive it under the right circumstances. And this is the right circumstance. I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay composed. Claire met my eyes. Yes, she said quietly. I believe it is. A heavy silence settled between us. I could feel it pressing in on me thick with everything I didn't yet understand. My husband had known something. He had feared something, and somehow, Ethan had been part of it. The same man I had spent over a decade believing was a liar, a manipulator, a threat to our family. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. Claire, I said slowly, what exactly did my husband think was going to happen? She hesitated. For the first time since this conversation began, she looked uncertain. I don't know everything, she admitted, but I know he was worried about your safety. Not in a physical sense necessarily, but in a legal one, a financial one. My stomach dropped. Legal, I repeated. She nodded. He mentioned concerns about documents, signatures, decisions being made without your full understanding. A cold realization began to form at the edges of my mind. The papers Emily had asked me to sign. Ryan's insistence on handling everything. The conversations I wasn't meant to overhear. She's not asking too many questions yet. I felt a sudden sharp chill run through my body. Before I could say anything else, the door opened. Ryan walked in, followed closely by Emily. They both stopped when they saw Claire sitting beside me. "Oh," Ryan said, his tone shifting instantly into something polite but guarded. "We didn't realize you were still here." Claire stood smoothly, her expression returning to professional calm. "I was just checking on Mrs. Hayes," she said. "She's stable, but we'd like to keep her for observation a little longer." Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. "How much longer?" he asked. "A day or two," Claire replied. "That seems unnecessary," Emily said quickly, stepping closer to my bed. "She'll recover better at home, surrounded by family." Family, the word felt different now, heavier. Claire didn't argue. She simply nodded. "I'll let the doctor discuss that with you," she said, then turned and left the room. The door clicked shut behind her, and suddenly I was alone with my children. Ryan looked at me, his expression unreadable. "How are you feeling?" "Mom," he asked. It sounded like concern. But now I wasn't sure I knew what that sounded like anymore. I glanced down at the note still in my hand, then at the envelope resting quietly on my lap. And for the first time in my life, I realized something I never thought I would question. I didn't know if I could trust my own children. Ryan didn't wait for my answer. He stepped closer to the bed, already reaching for the plastic chair beside me, pulling it forward with a scrape that felt louder than it should have in the quiet room. Emily moved to my other side, her perfume faint but familiar, something soft and floral that used to comfort me. Now it made my stomach tighten. "I'm okay," I said finally, my voice steady enough to pass. "Just tired." "That's to be expected," Ryan replied quickly. "The doctor said your blood pressure spiked pretty badly. You're lucky it wasn't worse." Lucky. The word lingered in the air, but it didn't land the way he intended. Emily leaned forward, placing her hand lightly over mine. I felt the weight of it, the warmth, and something else underneath. Something rehearsed. "We were so worried," she said, her tone gentle. "When you collapsed. It scared us, Mom." I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes held mine, but there was a distance there I couldn't ignore anymore, a carefulness, like she was watching herself, measuring every expression. "You weren't here when I woke up," I said quietly. It slipped out before I could stop it. Ryan and Emily exchanged the smallest glance, so quick most people would have missed it. I didn't. "We had to step out for a bit," Ryan said. "Talk to the front desk, handle some paperwork. We didn't expect you to wake up so soon." "Handle some paperwork." "Of course. That's fine," I said, forcing a faint smile. "I'm awake now." Emily squeezed my hand slightly as if that settled something. "Good," she said, "because we actually need to talk about a few things." There it was. Not rest, not how are you feeling, not even we're glad you're okay, just things. I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of things?" I asked. Ryan leaned back slightly in his chair, crossing his arms. "Nothing stressful," he said quickly. "Just next steps, making sure everything's in place so you don't have to worry. Next steps." The same phrase from before. I felt something tighten in my chest, but I pushed it down. Like what I asked again. Emily glanced at Ryan before answering. "Well," she began, "we've been talking about your living situation. After this, it might not be safe for you to stay in the house by yourself anymore." There it was again, safe. "I've been managing," I said carefully. Ryan sighed softly, not impatient, but not quite patient either. "Mom, you collapsed," he said. "That's not managing." His tone was reasonable, logical. It was the kind of tone I had used countless times in my career when speaking to parents who didn't want to hear hard truths, and yet something about it now felt off. "We just want to make things easier for you," Emily added. "Less stress, more support." The words were almost identical to before. Scripted. "We were thinking," Ryan continued, "you could stay with us for a while, just until everything stabilizes." "With you?" I asked. He nodded. "It makes the most sense. Lauren's already prepared the guest room." Lauren, my daughter-in-law. I felt a flicker of unease at the mention of her name. "And my house?" I asked. Ryan hesitated just for a second. "We'll take care of it," he said. "Don't worry about that. Take care of it." I had heard that phrase too many times now. Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder. "There are also a couple of forms we might need you to sign," she said, opening it carefully. "Just temporary things, in case we need to make decisions on your behalf while you recover." My heartbeat quickened. Forms. Sign. The words from Ethan's note echoed in my mind. Do not sign anything. I kept my face calm. What kind of forms? I asked. Emily's smile didn't waver. Just standard authorization, she said. Medical decisions, financial access, nothing unusual. It just makes everything smoother if something comes up. Smoother, easier, handled. Every word felt like a piece of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was building. I'm not sure I'm ready to sign anything right now, I said slowly. Ryan leaned forward slightly. It's just a precaution, Mom, he said. You don't have to think of it as permanent. I met his eyes. When have I ever signed something without understanding it first? I asked. That made him pause. For just a moment, the confidence in his expression flickered. Emily stepped in quickly. Of course you can review it, she said. We just thought it might be easier to get it done while we're all here. Easier. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I shifted slightly in the bed, letting my shoulders slump just a bit, letting my voice soften. I'm still a little foggy, I said. Maybe tomorrow. Ryan exhaled, clearly not pleased, but he nodded. Fine, he said, tomorrow. Emily closed the folder, though I noticed she didn't put it away. She kept it on her lap, her fingers resting on top of it like she wasn't ready to let it go. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then Ryan spoke again. The doctor mentioned discharge, he said. We should probably aim for later today or tomorrow morning. My stomach tightened. Claire said I might need another day or two, I replied. Ryan's expression hardened slightly. That seems excessive, he said. There's no reason for you to stay here longer than necessary. Necessary. I thought of Claire's words. If you are reading this alone, I'd feel better staying another day, I said. Emily's smile returned, but it was thinner now. If that's what you want, she said. We just don't want you getting too comfortable here. Too comfortable in a hospital. I nodded slowly, pretending not to notice the tension building beneath their calm voices. I understand, I said. Ryan stood up, pacing once near the foot of the bed. All right, he said. We'll talk to the doctor. See what we can do. We, not me. Emily leaned closer again, her voice softer now. You know we're doing this because we love you, right, she said. I looked at her. Really looked this time. At the carefully controlled expression, the slight tightness around her eyes, the way her hand hovered just a little too deliberately near mine. I know, I said. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if it was true. They stayed for another 20 minutes talking about small things, traffic schedules, who would pick up groceries. Normal conversations on the surface, but beneath it, everything felt misaligned. Like watching a play where the actors knew their lines, but something in the performance didn't feel real. Eventually, they left. Ryan said he would speak to the doctor. Emily said she'd come back later with everything we needed. And just like that, I was alone again. The silence returned, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt charged. I looked down at the note still resting beside me, then at the envelope Michael had left behind. For 12 years, I had believed Ethan was the one person I needed to stay away from. Now he was the only one who seemed to be telling me the truth. My hand hovered over the phone on the bedside table. I hesitated for only a second. Then I picked it up. Because whatever was happening, I needed answers, and I had a feeling Ethan Hayes was the only one who could give them. My fingers hovered over the phone screen longer than they should have. It wasn't just hesitation. It was something deeper, something rooted in 12 years of silence, resentment, and a version of the past I had never questioned until now. Ethan Hayes. For more than a decade, that name had existed in my life like a closed door, one I had never tried to open again. Michael had made sure of that. I could still remember the night everything fell apart between them. The raised voices, the accusations, the cold finality in Michael's tone when he said, "You're not welcome here anymore," and me standing beside my husband, not asking enough questions, not demanding the truth, just choosing loyalty over clarity. Now sitting alone in a hospital bed with a warning in my hand, I wondered how much that loyalty had cost me. I exhaled slowly and tapped the screen, and Claire had already saved the number for me before she left. "Only use this when you're ready," she had said quietly, and don't let anyone else see." The call rang once, twice. On the third ring, someone answered, "Hello." His voice was older, rougher than I remembered, but there was no mistaking it. "Ethan," I said. Silence. Then Laura. My throat tightened at the sound of my name on his lips. It had been so long that hearing it from him felt almost unreal. "Yes," I said softly. Another pause. Not awkward, just heavy, like we were both standing at the edge of something neither of us fully understood yet. I didn't think... He began, then stopped. "Are you okay?" It was such a simple question, and yet it landed differently than anything Ryan or Emily had said. "I don't know," I admitted. There was a faint exhale on the other end of the line. "Then the note reached you," he said. "It did." "And you were alone?" he asked carefully. I swallowed. "Yes." Another silence. But this one wasn't empty. It felt like confirmation, like a fear that had just become real. "I was hoping I was wrong," Ethan said quietly. My grip tightened on the phone. Wrong about what I asked. There was a shift in his tone, then something more serious, more focused. "Laura," he said, "I need you to listen carefully, and I need you to trust me even if that feels impossible right now." I let out a small, humorless breath. "You're asking a lot," I said. "I know," he replied, "but I wouldn't be saying this if it wasn't important." I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself. "All right," I said, "I'm listening." There was a brief pause as if he was choosing his words carefully. "Before Michael died, Ethan began. He came to me." The words hit me harder than I expected. "He what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "He came to me," Ethan repeated. "About 6 months before everything happened." I felt my chest tighten. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "You two hadn't spoken in years." "I know," he said. "That's why I knew something was wrong the second he showed up." I tried to picture it. Michael walking into Ethan's life after all those years of distance, of anger. It didn't fit. "What did he want?" I asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. "He wanted help," he said. The words settled over me slowly. Michael, asking for help. From Ethan. Help with what I pressed. "With you," Ethan said. A cold wave moved through my body. "With me," I repeated. "Yes," he said. "He was worried about you." I frowned. "That doesn't make sense," I said again. If he was worried, why didn't he tell me? Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Because he didn't have proof yet," he said. "And because he was afraid of what it would do to you if he was wrong." My mind raced. Wrong about what Ethan I asked. There was no hesitation this time. About Ryan and Emily. The room seemed to shrink around me. "What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying," Ethan replied carefully, "that your husband believes something was happening behind your back. Something involving your finances, your accounts, your legal authority." My heart started pounding. "That's not possible," I said instinctively. "They've been helping me." "I know," he said. "That's what makes it so dangerous." I felt a flash of anger. "You don't know them like I do," I said sharply. There was a pause. Then quietly, "I think I know more than you realize." The words stopped me. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means Michael wasn't guessing," Ethan said. "He had already started seeing signs, like what I demanded. Unexplained withdrawals," he said. "Documents that didn't match his records. Conversations he overheard that didn't sit right." I thought of Ryan on the phone. "She's not asking too many questions yet." My stomach dropped. "No," I said softly. That doesn't prove anything. It didn't prove enough for him either," Ethan admitted. "That's why he came to me." "Why you?" I asked. There was a bitter edge to his next words. "Because I'm the one person in the family who knows how these things happen," he said. "I've seen it before. I've dealt with it before." A memory flickered in my mind. The accusations, the argument 12 years ago, the inheritance. "You mean with your mother's estate?" I said slowly. "Yes," he replied. I hesitated. "For years, Michael said you manipulated that situation," I said. Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Then did he ever show you proof?" he asked. The question hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Because the truth was, no, he hadn't. "I trusted him," I said finally. "I know," Ethan said gently. And I'm not blaming you for that, but Laura, what if that wasn't the whole story? The room felt colder. You're saying Michael was wrong, I asked. I'm saying Ethan replied that Michael realized he might have been wrong, and by the time he came to me, he was already carrying that regret. My chest tightened painfully. That's not... I began, but my voice faltered. It was too much, too fast. Everything I thought I knew about my husband, about our past, about my children, was starting to shift in ways I couldn't control. What exactly did he ask you to do? I asked, forcing myself to stay focused. Ethan's voice steadied. He asked me to help him gather evidence, he said, quietly, without alerting anyone. My breath caught. Evidence of what I asked, that your children might be preparing to take control of your assets, he said, legally, financially, completely. A sharp, cold silence filled the space between us. They wouldn't do that, I said, but even to my own ears, the words sounded weaker now. I hope you're right, Ethan said softly. I really do. I looked down at the envelope still resting on my lap, at the note in my other hand, at the pieces of a reality I didn't yet fully understand. Then why leave me that message, I asked. Why not tell me everything? Because Michael didn't have enough proof before he died, Ethan said. And he didn't want to destroy your relationship with them unless he was absolutely certain. My eyes stung. That sounded like him, painfully like him. He thought he had more time, Ethan continued, but when his condition got worse, he realized he might not. I swallowed hard. So he made a plan, I said. Yes, Ethan replied, a backup plan. The words echoed in my mind, a backup plan, for me. I need you to do something, Ethan said then. What I asked. Do not sign anything, he said firmly, no matter how small it seems. And do not go home with them until we know exactly what's going on. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding. The same words from the note, verbatim. When can I see you, I asked. There was no hesitation this time. Tonight, he said. I'll come to you. I opened my eyes again. For the first time since waking up in that hospital room, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not confusion, something sharper, something clearer. Okay, I said, because whatever truth I had been living in before, it was already starting to crack. I didn't realize how tightly I had been gripping the phone until my fingers began to ache. After I hung up with Ethan, I just sat there, staring at nothing, letting everything he had said settle into the spaces where certainty used to live. Michael had gone to him. Not just once, but months before he died, and not for something small, not for closure, not for reconciliation, for help. The idea alone felt like something I wasn't supposed to understand yet. It didn't fit the version of my husband I had carried all these years, the one who believed in quiet strength, in keeping problems contained and protecting the people he loved by shouldering the burden alone. But maybe that was exactly what he had been doing, carrying something I was never meant to see, until now. A soft knock broke through my thoughts. Come in, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Claire stepped inside, closing the door behind her like she had before. Her eyes moved quickly around the room as if checking for something or someone before she approached. They were here, she asked quietly. Yes, I said, they just left. She nodded, her expression tightening slightly. Did they ask you to sign anything, she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. They tried, I said. I told them I'd wait. A small breath of relief escaped her. Good, she said. That was the right decision. I studied her face for a moment. You knew they would, I said. It wasn't a question. Claire met my gaze, and for the first time since I met her, there was no attempt to soften the truth. I suspected, she said carefully. Your husband wasn't specific about everything, but he made it clear there was a risk. Risk. The word sat heavily between us. I glanced down at the envelope still resting in my lap. I spoke to Ethan, I said. Claire's eyes flickered with recognition. Then you know more than you did an hour ago, she said. I know enough to be scared, I admitted. She pulled the chair closer again and sat down, her posture calm but attentive. That's understandable, she said gently, but fear isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's what keeps us from making the wrong decision at the wrong time. I let out a slow breath. He said Michael had evidence, I said. That something was already happening before he died. Claire nodded slightly. That aligns with what he told me, she said. What exactly did he tell you? I asked. She folded her hands together, thinking. He didn't go into full detail, she said, but he mentioned concerns about your financial accounts discrepancies he couldn't explain. He also said something about documents being prepared without your full awareness. My stomach tightened. That's already happening, I said quietly. Claire didn't look surprised. Then we need to move carefully, she said. We. It was a small word, but it mattered. I wasn't alone in this, not completely, not anymore. I picked up the envelope, turning it over in my hands. The paper felt heavier now, as if it carried more than just whatever was inside. He told you to give this to me only under certain conditions, I said. Why? Claire's expression softened slightly. Because he believed that if those conditions were met, it would mean you were vulnerable, she said, and that you needed the truth immediately, not gradually. Vulnerable, I swallowed hard. I've been vulnerable for months, I said. She gave me a sympathetic look. Yes, she said, but now you're aware of it. That was the difference. Awareness, clarity, even if it hurt. Have you opened it yet? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Do you want me to stay? She asked. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to be alone, to process whatever was inside without anyone watching. But another part of me, the part that had just started to understand how much I might have missed, knew better than to isolate myself again. Yes, I said. Stay. Claire nodded. All right, she said. Take your time. I ran my thumb along the edge of the envelope. For a moment, I just held it there, remembering Michael's hands. The way he used to open letters carefully, never tearing the paper, always precise. He had touched this, sealed it, left it behind for me. The realization made my chest ache. I'm not sure I'm ready for what's inside, I admitted. Claire's voice was soft but steady. You may never feel ready, she said. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't know. I closed my eyes for a brief second, then slowly I opened them again and broke the seal. The paper inside slid out easily, just a few folded pages neatly arranged. Michael's handwriting filled the top sheet. The moment I saw it, something inside me cracked. It had been months since I'd seen his writing, since I'd heard his voice, since I'd felt anything that connected me directly to him. And now, here it was. Not a memory, not a photograph, but his words, to me. My vision blurred slightly, but I forced myself to focus. I began to read. Laura, if you are reading this, then something has already gone wrong. My breath caught. I am so sorry that I couldn't explain this to you myself. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't stop. I tried, more than once, but every time I came close, I saw how tired you were, how much you were already carrying, and I told myself I needed more proof before I risked breaking your heart. My grip tightened on the paper. That may have been my greatest mistake. A tear slipped down my cheek. There are things happening that I don't fully understand yet, but I know enough to be concerned. About our accounts, about decisions being made without you fully present, about conversations I've overheard that don't sit right. The words felt like echoes of everything Ethan had said. I wanted to believe I was wrong. I still do. My chest ached. But if I'm not, then I need you to be careful. Do not sign anything unless you fully understand it. Do not let anyone rush you into decisions. And most importantly, do not ignore your instincts, even if they lead you somewhere painful. I paused, my hands trembling. My instincts. How many times had I ignored them? How many times had I told myself I was just imagining things? I swallowed hard and continued. I've asked Ethan to help if I can't finish this myself. I know that may be difficult for you to accept. I know what I said about him in the past. But Laura, I need you to trust me now. My breath hitched. I was not completely honest with you about what happened between us years ago. The words blurred for a moment as tears filled my eyes. And that is something I will regret for the rest of my life. I lowered the paper slightly, my heart pounding. Claire sat quietly beside me, not interrupting, not asking questions. Just there. I took a shaky breath and continued reading. If you're holding this, then it means I ran out of time, and I am so sorry for that. The weight of those words pressed down on me heavy and undeniable. Michael had known. Not everything, but enough. Enough to be afraid. Enough to prepare. Enough to leave behind pieces of a truth I was only just beginning to see. I folded the letter slowly, my hands unsteady. "I don't think I knew my own life," I whispered. Claire didn't try to contradict me. "Sometimes," she said gently, "we only see things clearly when we're forced to." I nodded faintly, staring at the letter in my hands. Michael had tried to protect me. Ethan was trying to help me. And my children. I closed my eyes briefly, the thought too heavy to finish. When I opened them again, something inside me had shifted. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. "I need to see what's in the rest of that box," I said. Claire tilted her head slightly. "The safe deposit box?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes," I said, "because whatever Michael couldn't tell me, he left it there. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was moving forward, toward the truth, no matter where it led. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the noise, there wasn't any. The hospital floor was unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that presses against your ears until your own thoughts become too loud to ignore, and mine wouldn't stop. Michael's letter lay folded on the small tray beside my bed, its presence almost physical. Every word I had read replayed in my mind over and over again. "Do not sign anything. Do not ignore your instincts. I was not completely honest with you." That last line lingered the longest. Not honest. For 40 years, I believed our marriage was built on truth, even when things were difficult, even when we disagreed. But now I was realizing there were parts of our life, important parts, that I had never fully seen. Or worse, never been allowed to see. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to wait. If there was more to uncover, I needed to do it before Ryan and Emily realized anything had changed. Claire returned just after sunrise, her expression alert the moment she stepped into the room. "You didn't sleep," she said gently. It wasn't a question. "No," I replied, "but I've been thinking." She nodded, closing the door behind her. "That can be dangerous," she said lightly. I almost smiled. "I need to get to that safe deposit box," I said. Her tone shifted, instantly more focused. "Do you have the key?" she asked. I held it up from the bedside table. "Yes." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right," she said. "Then we need to do this carefully." Carefully how, I asked. "Your children think you're still here," she said. "Recovering, vulnerable. That gives you an advantage, but only if they don't realize it's an act." I understood immediately. "You think they're watching?" I asked. "I think they're expecting control," she replied, "and anything outside that expectation could make them adjust their approach. Adjust." The word sent a quiet chill through me. "Ethan is coming tonight," I said. "He said he'd meet me." Claire nodded. "Good," she said. "Then we wait until then. The fewer moves you make alone, the better." I exhaled slowly. Waiting wasn't what I wanted, but I knew she was right. The rest of the morning passed in careful stillness. Doctors came and went. Nurses checked my vitals. Everything appeared routine, predictable, even mundane, but beneath it all there was tension. A quiet, invisible thread pulling everything tighter. Around noon, Ryan returned, this time alone. "Hey," he said, stepping into the room with a small nod. "How are you feeling?" "Better," I said. That wasn't entirely a lie. Physically, I did feel stronger. Mentally, I felt something sharper than I had in months. More awake, more aware. Ryan sat down, his movements controlled, deliberate. "I spoke to the doctor," he said. "They're being overly cautious as usual, but we should be able to get you discharged by tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow, too soon. I'd like to stay another day," I said, calmly. He frowned slightly. "Why?" he asked. "I just don't feel ready," I replied, letting a trace of uncertainty slip into my voice. He studied me, not with concern, with assessment. It was subtle, but I saw it now. Every glance, every pause. He wasn't just checking on me, he was measuring me. "That's understandable," he said finally, "but being here longer won't necessarily help. You'll recover better at home." "At home, or under supervision, I'd still prefer to wait," I said. His jaw tightened just slightly. "Mom," he said, his tone softening, but not in a comforting way. We're trying to do what's best for you." There it was again. We. I nodded slowly. "I know," I said. Silence stretched between us. Then he leaned forward. "Emily's coming by later," he added. "She has those forms we talked about yesterday. Maybe we can go over them together." My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "Maybe," I said. Ryan held my gaze for a moment longer than usual. Then he stood. "All right," he said. "I'll let you rest." As he turned to leave, I noticed something I might have missed before. His eyes flicked briefly, almost unconsciously, to the tray beside my bed, to the letter, to the envelope, to the key. It was quick, but it was there. And when he left the room, closing the door behind him, I felt something settle into place. He was watching, not openly, not aggressively, but carefully. That realization changed everything. I picked up the letter again, holding it tighter this time. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what was happening. I was beginning to see the pattern. And patterns were something I understood. Years in education had taught me that behavior repeated often enough always revealed intent. Ryan's urgency, Emily's careful language, the constant push for signatures, for decisions, for control. It wasn't random. It wasn't just concern. It was strategy. Later that afternoon, Emily arrived. She carried the same folder as before. Her smile was warm, too warm. "How's my favorite person?" she asked, stepping into the room. I gave a small smile. "I'm your only mother," I said. "Still counts," she replied lightly. She sat down, placing the folder carefully on her lap. "I won't keep you long," she said. "I know you're tired. I just thought we could go over a few things very quick. Nothing complicated." Quick, nothing complicated. The words felt rehearsed now. Predictable. "I'm still a little foggy," I said, echoing my earlier excuse. Her smile tightened just a fraction. "I understand," she said, "but these are just formalities. It's better to get them out of the way." I shook my head gently. "Tomorrow," I said, "I promise." There was a pause. A longer one this time. Then Emily exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said. "Tomorrow." But something had shifted. Her eyes lingered on me differently now. More focused, more searching, as if she was trying to figure out what had changed. I held her gaze, letting just enough uncertainty show to keep her comfortable. Eventually, she closed the folder. "Get some rest," she said, standing up. "I will," I replied. She hesitated for a moment near the door. "Then you trust us, right?" she asked. The question hit me harder than anything else she had said. Not because of the words, but because of the timing, because of the way she asked it. Not casually, not naturally, carefully. Like it mattered more than anything else. I met her eyes, and for a moment I saw something beneath the surface. Not love, not concern, fear, but not fear for me. Fear of losing control. "I've always trusted you," I said. It wasn't an answer. Not really, but it was enough. She nodded slowly. Then left. And just like that, the room was quiet again. But this time the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the calm before something inevitable. I looked at the key in my hand, at the letter beside me, at the pieces of a truth that were no longer hidden, just unfinished. Tonight, Ethan would come. And when he did, everything would start to come together. Because whatever my children were planning, I was no longer walking into it blind. By the time evening settled over the hospital, I felt like I had lived through an entire lifetime in a single day. The light outside my window dimmed, slowly turning the sky into a muted gray that matched the heaviness in my chest. But beneath that weight, something else had taken root. Clarity. Not complete, not comfortable, but enough to change the way I saw everything. Claire stopped by just before her shift ended. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. I nodded, yes. She stepped further into the room, closing the door behind her with the same careful motion she always used now. Nothing about this felt routine anymore. "I arranged for your discharge papers to be delayed until morning," she said. "Officially, you're still under observation." "Thank you," I replied. She studied my face for a moment. "You understand that once you leave here, things will move quickly," she added. "Your children won't wait much longer." "I know," I said, and I did. That was the part that kept echoing in my mind how urgent they had been, how every conversation seemed to circle back to timing, signatures, control. They weren't just helping, they were preparing. For now, Claire continued, the most important thing is that they believe nothing has changed. I nodded again. They do, I said, at least for now. She hesitated slightly. And Ethan, she asked. He's coming tonight, I said. After visiting hours, Claire gave a small, approving nod. Good, she said. I'll make sure no one interrupts. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. Claire, I said, stopping her before she turned to leave. She looked back at me. Why are you helping me like this? I asked. The question had been sitting in the back of my mind since the moment she handed me that note. She considered it for a second. Because your husband was scared, she said simply. And because he trusted me enough to ask for help. She paused, then added more softly, and because I've seen what happens when people don't listen to that kind of fear. Her words lingered after she left. I sat in silence for a while, watching the shadows in the room stretch longer as the sun disappeared completely. The hospital changed at night. The noise faded, the movement slowed, conversations became quieter, more deliberate. It felt hidden. Like things that didn't belong in daylight could exist more freely in the dark. Around 9:30, there was a soft knock at the door. Not the brisk professional kind I had grown used to. Something more hesitant. Come in, I said. The door opened slowly, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. Ethan Hayes stood in the doorway, older than the man I remembered. His hair was thinner, streaked with gray. His face carried lines that hadn't been there before. But his eyes, they were the same. Sharp, observant, careful. Laura, he said quietly. Hearing my name from him again, this time in person, felt strange, familiar, and distant all at once. Ethan, I replied. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. 12 years of silence doesn't disappear easily. I wasn't sure you'd call, he admitted. I wasn't sure I would either, I said. That earned the faintest hint of a smile. I'm glad you did, he said. He pulled a chair closer, sitting down across from me, not too close, not too far. Like he understood that whatever this was between us now, it needed space. I read Michael's letter, I said. His expression shifted immediately. Then you know he was worried, he said. Yes, I replied. But I don't know everything. You're not supposed to yet, he said. That's why we're here. The words still felt unfamiliar coming from him. I want to go to the safe deposit box, I said. Tonight. He didn't hesitate. Good, he said. That's exactly what we need to do. You already knew about it, I said. He nodded. Michael told me where it was, he said. But he made it clear it had to be you who opened it. Why, I asked. Because legally it belongs to you, he said. And because whatever's inside, it was meant for your eyes first. I glanced down at the key resting beside me. It felt heavier now. More important. Do you know what's in it, I asked? Ethan shook his head. Not everything he said. But I know the kind of things he was collecting. Evidence, I said, yes. The words settled between us. Cold, final. I've already seen some of it, I admitted. Through the letter, and what you told me. That's just the surface, he said. If Michael did what I think he did, there's more. A lot more. My stomach tightened. Then we shouldn't wait, I said. We won't, he replied. But we have to be careful about how we leave here. I frowned slightly. What do you mean, your son, Ethan said. He's watching you. I felt a chill run through me. I noticed that, I said quietly. Ethan nodded. He's not reckless, he said. That's what makes this dangerous. He's controlled, methodical, and if he senses anything has changed, he'll adapt. Adapt. The same word Clare had used. Emily, I asked. Ethan's expression darkened slightly. She's more emotional, he said, but that doesn't make her harmless. In some ways, it makes her more unpredictable. I leaned back slightly, absorbing that. For so long, I had seen my children in such simple ways. Ryan, the responsible one. Emily, the sensitive one. But now they felt like strangers I was only beginning to understand. What about Lauren, I asked. Ethan let out a quiet breath. She's the catalyst, he said. Not the cause, but the one pushing things forward. That aligned with what he had said on the phone, with what I asked, with the idea that everything needs to happen now, he said. Before you regain control. The words hit harder than I expected. Before I regain control. So they think I've already lost it, I said. Ethan didn't sugarcoat his answer. Yes, the honesty stung, but I needed it. Then we don't give them time, I said firmly. Ethan studied me for a moment, and for the first time since he walked in, there was something like approval in his eyes. No, he said, we don't. We sat in silence for a second. Not uncomfortable, just real. I should have listened to you years ago, I said suddenly. The words surprised even me. Ethan didn't react immediately. That's not on you, he said finally. Michael made his choices. You trusted your husband. There's nothing wrong with that, but he wasn't honest with me, I said. Ethan nodded slowly. No, he said. He wasn't. There was no judgment in his voice, just truth. And now I'm paying for that, I said. Not if we fix it, he replied. Fix it. I wasn't sure anything could truly be fixed, but maybe it could be understood. And right now, that was enough. Then let's go, I said. Ethan stood. Claire will help us get out without drawing attention, he said. We'll go straight to the bank. I reached for the edge of the bed, steadying myself as I stood. My legs felt stronger than they had this morning, or maybe it was something else. Determination. Because whatever was waiting in that safe deposit box, it wasn't just answers. It was the truth Michael never got the chance to give me. And tonight, I was finally going to face it. The air outside the hospital felt different. Colder, sharper, or maybe it was just me. Claire had guided us through a side exit, usually reserved for staff, her movements calm but deliberate, as if she had done something like this before, or at least understood the importance of doing it right. She didn't say much, only paused once to look directly at me before we stepped outside. Be careful who you trust from this point on, she said. It wasn't a warning, it was a reminder. Ethan thanked her quietly, and then we were alone. The parking lot was dimly lit shadows stretching long under flickering lights. Ethan's car was parked near the edge, away from the main entrance. Get in, he said. I didn't hesitate. The drive to the bank was quiet, not tense, just heavy. The kind of silence that comes when both people know something important is about to happen, but neither of them wants to say the wrong thing before it does. I watched the city pass by through the window, familiar streets that suddenly felt distant, like I was seeing them from the outside for the first time in my life. Are you sure you're ready for this? Ethan asked finally, his eyes still on the road. No, I said honestly. That seemed to satisfy him. Good, he replied. That means you're taking it seriously. I let out a small breath, almost a laugh, though it didn't quite reach that point. We pulled into the bank parking lot a few minutes later. It was one of those older buildings, solid quiet, the kind that hadn't changed much over the years. The lights inside were still on, though it was late enough that only minimal staff would be there. Ethan turned off the engine and looked at me. Once we go in, he said, everything becomes real. I met his gaze. It already is, I said. He nodded. And we stepped out of the car. Inside, the bank was nearly empty. A single employee stood behind the counter, glancing up as we entered. Ethan stayed slightly behind me, letting me lead. That mattered, because this, whatever was waiting for me, belonged to me. Good evening, the employee said politely. How can I help you? I need access to my safe deposit box, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The process was routine. Identification, verification, signatures. The irony didn't escape me. Signatures. So much had come down to that one simple act. Signing without questioning. Signing without knowing. Not this time. The employee led us down a narrow hallway into the vault area. The heavy door opened with a low mechanical sound that echoed in the quiet space. Rows of boxes lined the walls, secure, silent, holding secrets no one else could see. This way, the employee said, stopping at a mid-level box. I stepped forward, pulling the key from my pocket. For a moment, I just held it there. Then I inserted it. The lock clicked. Simple, final. The employee removed the box and placed it on a small table nearby, then stepped away, giving us privacy. Take your time, he said, before leaving. The door closed behind him. And just like that, it was just me and Ethan, and whatever Michael had left behind. I sat down slowly, my hands resting on either side of the box. Ethan didn't rush me. He stood a few feet away, giving me space. "Whenever you're ready," he said quietly. I nodded, then I opened it. Inside was more than I expected. Not just a few documents, not just a letter, but a collection. Carefully organized, deliberate. There were folders labeled in Michael's handwriting, USB drives, bank statements, photocopies, and at the very top, another letter. I picked it up first. My hands were steady now. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I needed to know. I unfolded it slowly. "Laura, if you've made it here, then you've already seen enough to know something isn't right." I swallowed hard. "What you're about to find in this box is not everything, but it's enough to show a pattern." Pattern. The word echoed in my mind. I didn't want to believe it at first. I still don't, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I lowered the letter slightly, my eyes moving to the folders beneath. Pattern. That's what I had started to see too, in their words, their behavior, their urgency. I set the letter aside and opened the first folder. Inside were bank statements. Highlighted, annotated, Michael's handwriting filled the margins, notes, dates, questions. I flipped through them quickly at first, then slower, more carefully. The numbers didn't lie. There were withdrawals, transfers. Small at first, then larger, more frequent, and always just subtle enough to avoid immediate attention. "Do you see it?" Ethan asked quietly. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned to the next folder. More documents, this time copies of checks. My checks, or at least versions of them, my signature, or something that looked like it. But now that I was looking closely, I could see it. The difference. Slight, almost invisible. But there. "That's not me," I said. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. I moved to the next folder. Emails, printed, highlighted. Between Lauren and a real estate agent. My house. Discussing listing timelines, market value, suggested pricing. My breath caught. "They were going to sell it," I said. "Without telling you," Ethan confirmed. I felt something inside me shift. Not breaking, not collapsing, hardening. I kept going. Another folder. This one was different. Notes. Legal terms, phrases circled in red. Capacity evaluation. Medical determination. Guardianship petition. My hands went cold. "They were building a case," I said slowly. "Yes," Ethan said, "to prove I can't make my own decisions." He didn't correct me, because he didn't need to. I sat back slightly, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Every conversation, every suggestion, every moment they told me not to worry. It wasn't care, it was preparation. Preparation for control, for ownership, for taking everything I had built and turning it into something I no longer had any say over. Why now? I asked, my voice tighter. Why would they do this now? Ethan hesitated, then answered. "Because Michael was the only thing standing between you and them," he said. The words hit me harder than anything else. Michael. Even in death, he had been protecting me, and now he was gone. I looked back down at the contents of the box, at the evidence, at the truth I had spent months not seeing, and something inside me finally settled. Not into peace, not yet, but into certainty. "They didn't leave me at the hospital by accident," I said. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "They left me there on purpose." I continued, "Because it made me easier to control." He didn't argue, he didn't soften it, he just let the truth sit there, raw, unfiltered, and for the first time since this began, I didn't feel confused, I didn't feel lost, I felt clear. "They think I'm weak," I said. Ethan's expression shifted slightly. "They think you're vulnerable," he corrected. I looked at him, then back at the box, at everything Michael had left behind. "No," I said quietly. "They think I won't fight back." I closed the final folder, my hands no longer shaking, my breath steady, because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and more importantly, so did they. They just didn't know it yet. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I finally exhaled. The air in the vault felt heavier now. Not because anything had changed physically, but because everything had changed inside me. I wasn't searching anymore. I had found it. the pattern, the intent, the truth, and yet there was still one thing left: the USB drive. It sat in the corner of the box, smaller than everything else, almost easy to overlook if I hadn't already learned that the quietest pieces often carried the most weight. I reached for it slowly. Ethan watched but didn't interrupt. "You think that's the last piece?" he asked. "I think it's the piece he couldn't write," I said. That seemed to land with him. "There's a late-night branch with a private workstation down the hall," Ethan said. "We can check it here." I nodded. I wasn't sure I could carry all of this back to the car without opening it. Not when I had come this far. We gathered the documents carefully, placing everything back into the box except the USB drive and the letter I had already read. I locked it again, my hands steady this time, and followed Ethan down the narrow hallway toward a small room at the end. The bank employee glanced up as we passed, then returned to his screen. No questions, no suspicion, just routine. Inside the room, a single computer sat on a desk under dim lighting. Ethan closed the door behind us, and for a moment the quiet returned. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was waiting. "Go ahead," he said. I stepped forward. The USB drive felt cool in my hand as I inserted it into the port. The computer hummed softly as it recognized the device. A single folder appeared on the screen, labeled simply, "For Laura." My chest tightened. Even now, he had made it personal. I clicked it open. There were several files inside: documents, scanned copies, recordings. But one stood out immediately. A video file dated 2 weeks before Michael died. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to see it, but because I already knew. Once I did, there would be no distance left, no interpretation. Just him, as he was, at the end. "Do you want me to step out?" Ethan asked quietly. I shook my head. "No," I said. "Stay." He nodded, moving slightly to the side. I clicked the file. The screen flickered. Then Michael appeared. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. He was sitting in his study, the one at home, with the dark wood shelves and the old desk he refused to replace. The lighting was soft, but I could see it clearly. He looked thinner, more tired than I remembered. But his eyes, they were the same. Steady, focused, looking directly into the camera. "Looking at me, Laura," he said. My throat closed. "I don't know when you'll see this," he continued, "or what will have happened by then. But if you're watching it, then I didn't get the chance to tell you everything I should have." His voice was calm, but underneath it I could hear something else. Regret. "I need you to listen carefully," he said, "because what I'm about to say is something I should have told you a long time ago." I felt Ethan shift slightly behind me, but I didn't turn. I couldn't. "I made a mistake," Michael said. The words hit me like a physical force. "A serious one," he added. I swallowed hard, my eyes locked on the screen. "Years ago, when my mother passed," he continued, "I told you that Ethan had manipulated the situation, that he had taken advantage of her estate, that he couldn't be trusted." I felt my chest tighten painfully. "That wasn't the full truth," he said. The room seemed to go still. I was angry, he admitted, hurt, and instead of dealing with that honestly, I chose to simplify it, to make him the problem, so I didn't have to face my own part in what happened. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. "I let that version of the story become the only one you knew," he continued. "And over time, I convinced myself it was enough." My hands trembled. "But it wasn't," he said softly. Silence filled the room for a moment. Not empty, heavy. "I'm telling you this now because I need you to understand something," Michael continued. "Ethan is not the man I made him out to be. And if you're watching this, he may be the only person you can trust to help you see what's really happening." I felt my knees weaken slightly, and I reached for the edge of the desk to steady myself. Everything I had believed, everything I had built around that belief, shifting, breaking, reforming. "There are things happening around you that I didn't fully understand at first," Michael said. "But I saw enough to know I couldn't ignore it." His expression hardened slightly. "Our accounts," he said, "documents, conversations I wasn't meant to hear." My heart pounded. "I tried to investigate quietly," he continued, "to make sure I wasn't overreacting. But the more I looked, the more it became clear that something wasn't right. I closed my eyes for a second, then forced them open again. I needed to see this, all of it. If I had more time, I would have told you everything in person, he said, but time is the one thing I don't have anymore. The words hit deeper than anything else. Time. Gone. I need you to be strong now, he said, his voice softer again, stronger than you've ever had to be. Another tear fell. Do not let guilt guide your decisions, he continued. Do not let love blind you to what's in front of you. I felt something shift inside me. Not breaking, aligning. You are not alone, he said, even if it feels that way. I glanced briefly at Ethan, then back to the screen. And whatever you discover, Michael added, remember this, protect yourself first, because if what I fear is true, they will not. The words hung in the air. Final. Unavoidable. Michael looked at the camera for a long moment. Then his expression softened. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for everything I didn't say when I had the chance. My vision blurred completely now. I love you, he added. And then the screen went dark. I didn't move. I couldn't. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, not because of fear anymore, but because of truth. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. Laura? I shook my head slightly. Not yet. I needed a moment, just one, to let it all settle. Michael hadn't just confirmed what I was beginning to suspect. He had given me something else. Permission. Permission to see clearly. Permission to act. Permission to stop protecting people who were no longer protecting me. I wiped my face slowly, my hands steadier than I expected. Then I looked back at the screen, at the folder, at everything still inside it, and I realized something important. This wasn't the end of the truth. It was just the beginning. I turned to Ethan. They think I don't know, I said. He nodded. Yes. I took a slow breath. Then we use that, I said. His expression shifted, more focused now. What are you thinking, he asked. I met his eyes. For now, we let them believe I'm exactly who they think I am, I said. Vulnerable, he asked. I shook my head. Predictable, I corrected. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. That might work, he said. I nodded, because now for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was planning, and that changed everything. We didn't speak much on the drive back, not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything that mattered had already been said. Michael's voice still echoed in my mind, steady and undeniable. Do not let love blind you. Protect yourself first. I had spent most of my life doing the opposite, putting my family first, trusting without question, believing that love by itself was enough to keep things from falling apart. Now I understood how dangerous that belief could be. Ethan pulled into the hospital parking lot just after midnight. The building looked the same as it had earlier, quiet still, almost peaceful. But I knew better now. Appearances meant nothing. Once we go back in, Ethan said, turning off the engine, everything becomes a performance. I nodded. I understand. You can't confront them yet, he added, not without everything in place. I won't, I said, and I meant it. Because as much as part of me wanted to walk straight into the next conversation with Ryan and Emily and lay everything out on the table, I knew that would be a mistake. They weren't expecting resistance, and that was my advantage. Tomorrow, Ethan continued. They'll push harder, I know, I said. They'll want signatures, decisions, movement. I looked at him. And they won't get it. That earned a quiet nod. Good, he said. We stepped out of the car and walked back toward the side entrance Clare had shown us earlier. She was waiting. Of course she was. You're back, she said softly, letting us in quickly before closing the door behind us. Her eyes moved between us, searching. Well, she asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I held her gaze and said, he knew. That was enough. Her expression shifted instantly. How much, she asked. Enough, I replied. Ethan stepped in. More than enough, he added. Clare nodded slowly, absorbing that. Then we move forward, she said. We. The word felt more solid now. Grounded. I need to be discharged tomorrow, I said. Clare blinked. That's not what you said earlier. I know, I replied, But if I stay here too long, they'll start asking why. She considered that. And once you're out, she asked. I go home, I said. Ethan frowned slightly. That's risky, he said. Not if they think it's their idea, I replied. That seemed to stop him. Claire tilted her head slightly. You're going to let them lead, she asked. For now, I said, yes. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then Ethan nodded slowly. That could work, he admitted, if you control the pace. I will, I said, because now I understood something I hadn't before. Control wasn't about force. It was about timing, and I had spent too long letting them set it. Then we prepare, Claire said. How, I asked. Ethan answered. We gather everything he said, documents, recordings, statements. We make sure there's no way for them to deny it when the time comes. And the time will come, I said. Yes, he replied. But not yet. I nodded. Not yet. That was the hardest part, but also the most important. Claire glanced at the hallway, then back at me. You should get back to your room, she said. If anyone notices you're gone, they'll start asking questions, I finished. She nodded. Exactly. Ethan stepped back slightly. I'll stay nearby, he said, just in case. I looked at him. 12 years of distance didn't disappear overnight, but something had changed. Trust. Not complete, not effortless, but real. Thank you, I said. He gave a small nod. Then Claire led me back to my room. The walk felt different this time. Not uncertain, not confused, purposeful. When I lay back in the hospital bed, everything around me looked the same. The same walls, the same machines, the same quiet hum of equipment. But I wasn't the same person who had woken up here. Not anymore. Morning came faster than I expected, and with it, Ryan, Emily, and Lauren. All three of them entered the room together this time. That alone told me something had shifted. They weren't just checking on me anymore. They were coordinating. Mom, Ryan said, his tone carefully warm. Good news. We got the discharge approved. That's great, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. Emily stepped forward, her smile bright. We'll take you home today, she said. Home. The word felt different now. Less like comfort, more like a stage. Lauren stood slightly behind them, her posture composed, her eyes sharp. Observing, calculating. She didn't speak immediately. She didn't need to. Before we go, Ryan added, there are just a couple of things we should finalize. Of course there were. Emily opened the folder again. The same one. The same papers. But now I saw them clearly for what they were. Not help, not support, control. I think I'm ready to go over those, I said. All three of them reacted, subtle, but immediate. Ryan leaned forward slightly. Emily's smile widened. Lauren's eyes sharpened. Hook, line, sinker. Great, Emily said quickly. This won't take long. She handed me the first document. I took it, slowly, carefully, and this time I read it. Every word, every clause, every implication. Silence filled the room as I did. Not the comfortable kind, the tense kind, the waiting kind. Finally, I looked up. This gives you medical decision authority, I said. Ryan nodded. Only if necessary, he added quickly. I turned to the next page. And this, I continued, gives access to my financial accounts. Emily shifted slightly. It's just for convenience, she said. Convenience. I almost smiled. And this, I said, flipping another page, mentions temporary guardianship. That one hit harder, because this was the step, the real one. Lauren spoke for the first time. It's a precaution, she said smoothly, given what happened. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time, I didn't see my daughter-in-law. I saw a strategist, someone who understood systems, pressure, timing. It's very thorough, I said. Her lips curved slightly. Thank you. I set the papers down gently. I'm not signing these, I said. Silence. Instant, complete. Ryan blinked. Emily's smile froze. Lauren didn't move. Mom, Ryan said carefully, maybe you just need more time. I've had enough time, I said. My voice was calm, steady, unshaken. I'm not signing anything today, I added. Emily's expression shifted. Why, she asked. A simple question, but loaded. I met her eyes. Because I want to review everything with my own attorney, I said. That changed the room, immediately. Ryan's posture stiffened. Emily's fingers tightened around the folder. Lauren's eyes narrowed just slightly. There it was. The shift. They hadn't expected resistance, not real resistance. Mom, Ryan said, his tone tightening. That's not necessary. It is to me, I replied. Silence stretched again, longer this time, sharper, and then for the first time since this began, I saw it. Not confusion, not concern, not even frustration, fear, because something had changed, and they felt it. Even if they didn't fully understand it yet, and in that moment, I knew. They weren't in control anymore, not completely, not like they thought, and they were starting to realize it. The silence that followed my words didn't feel accidental. It felt like impact, like something invisible had cracked in the room and all three of them were trying to figure out how deep the fracture ran. Ryan recovered first. He always did. Mom, he said, his voice calm but tighter than before. There's no need to bring an outside attorney into this. We're your family. There it was. Family. The word he thought would pull me back into place. But now, it sounded different. We are, Emily added quickly. We're just trying to help you. I looked at her, then at Ryan, then finally at Lauren. All three of them watching me, waiting, measuring, the same way that they had been doing for weeks. Only now, I was measuring them too. I know what you're trying to do, I said. Ryan's brow furrowed. What do you mean, he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I picked up the papers again, slowly, deliberately, and held them up. These aren't just precautions, I said. They're transfers of control. Emily shook her head quickly. That's not— Yes, it is, I interrupted, still calm. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to, because for the first time, I wasn't speaking from confusion. I was speaking from certainty. Ryan leaned forward. Mom, you're misunderstanding, no. I said, meeting his eyes directly. I'm understanding very clearly. That stopped him, just for a second, but it was enough. Lauren stepped forward slightly, her voice smooth, controlled. Laura, she said, we're concerned about your health. That's all this is. Concern. Health. Safety. The same words, the same pattern. I almost admired the consistency. Then why was my house being discussed with a real estate agent, I asked. The question landed hard. Emily's eyes widened. Ryan froze. Lauren didn't move, but something in her expression shifted. Barely. But I saw it. What are you talking about? Ryan asked, his tone sharper now. I held his gaze. Don't, I said quietly. Don't pretend you don't know. Silence. This time it wasn't just tension, it was exposure. Emily looked at Ryan, Ryan looked at Lauren, and Lauren finally spoke. That was a preliminary conversation, she said evenly. Nothing was finalized. I nodded slowly. Without telling me, I said. She didn't deny it, because she couldn't. Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Okay, he said. Let's just slow down for a second. No, we weren't slowing down anymore. We're past that, I replied. Emily's voice broke slightly. Mom, why are you doing this? She asked. We're on your side. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something closer to grief. Then why did you leave me alone at the hospital? I asked. The question cut through everything else. Sharp, direct, unavoidable. Emily blinked. Ryan looked away. Lauren stayed still. We didn't leave you, Ryan said after a moment. We stepped out. No, I said quietly. You left. My voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it did. You left me alone, I continued, and not by accident. Ryan's jaw tightened. That's not fair, he said. Isn't it? I asked. I leaned forward slightly, my hands resting on the bed. For the first time in my life, I said I woke up and realized no one was there for me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. It is, I said. And now my voice did shift, not louder, but deeper, more grounded. You didn't forget me, I said. You made a choice. The room went still again. Even Lauren didn't speak. Because this wasn't about documents anymore. This was the truth, and they knew it. Ryan shook his head. You're twisting this, he said. We've been taking care of you for months, taking control, I corrected. His eyes snapped back to mine. That's not what this is, he said. Then what is it? I asked. Silence. Again. Longer this time. Because now, they didn't have a script. Emily spoke first. I was trying to help, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know what else to do. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw something real. Not manipulation, Not strategy, fear, but not the same kind of fear Lauren carried. Emily's was messier, more desperate. "Help me," how I asked, gently. She hesitated. "Then I needed things to be stable," she said. The words were vague, too vague. "What does that mean?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "It means—" She began, then stopped. Ryan stepped in quickly. "It means she's been under a lot of pressure," he said. "We all have." Pressure. Another vague answer. Another deflection, but not from Lauren. She stepped forward again. This time there was no softness in her tone. "We're wasting time," she said. Ryan glanced at her. "Lauren, no," she continued. "If she doesn't want to cooperate, we need to adjust." Adjust. There was that word again, the one that kept echoing through everything. My eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, everything became clear. "You were planning this," I said. Not a question, a statement. Lauren didn't deny it. She didn't even hesitate. "We were preparing," she said. Ryan looked at her startled. "Lauren, what are you doing?" She ignored him because she had already decided something, and now she wasn't hiding it anymore. "You're not as strong as you used to be," she said to me. The words were calm, clinical, cruel in their simplicity. "And someone needs to make sure things are handled properly," she added. There it was, the truth. Unfiltered. Ryan stood up abruptly. "That's not how we talked about this," he said. Lauren turned to him. "Then maybe we should have been more honest from the beginning," she replied. Emily shook her head, tears falling now. "This isn't what I wanted," she said. But it was happening, because it had already been set in motion. I looked at all of them. My son, my daughter, the woman my son had chosen to build his life with, and I felt something shift completely inside me. Not breaking, not collapsing, closing, the part of me that had been trying to explain this away, to soften it, to find another version of the truth that didn't hurt as much. It was gone. "What you wanted doesn't matter anymore," I said quietly. Emily flinched. Ryan froze. Lauren just watched, because she understood. She understood that something had changed in a way that couldn't be undone. "I'm revoking any access you think you have," I continued. Effective immediately. Ryan's eyes widened. "You can't just—" "I can," I said. "And now?" There was no hesitation in my voice, no doubt, no fear. "I'm also contacting my attorney," I added, "and we'll be reviewing every transaction, every document, every decision made in my name." Silence. But this time, it wasn't theirs. It was mine. Controlled. Final. Lauren's expression hardened. "This doesn't have to become a legal situation," she said. "It already is," I replied. Ryan ran a hand over his face. "Mom, please," he said. I looked at him, at the boy I had raised, at the man he had become. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw the distance between those two versions. "You should have thought about that before you left me alone," I said. The words landed. Not loud, not dramatic, but absolute, because that was the moment, the one that changed everything. Not the documents, not the money, not even the betrayal. That moment, the empty hospital room, the silence, the realization that I had been easier to control when I felt abandoned, and now they knew, I knew, and there was no going back. They didn't argue after that, not right away. It was as if something in the room had shifted beyond negotiation, like a door had closed and no one was quite sure how to open it again. Ryan was the first to step back. Physically, I mean. He took a few slow steps away from the bed, his shoulders rising and falling as if he were trying to steady himself. He looked at me, but not directly, more like he was trying to see past me to find the version of his mother that had existed just yesterday. The one who trusted him, the one who didn't question. That woman was gone. Emily sat frozen in her chair, tears still slipping down her cheeks, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of everything had finally caught up to her. Lauren, on the other hand, didn't move at all. She stood exactly where she had been. Her posture straight, her expression composed, but colder now. Sharper, calculating. Because unlike the others, she understood what had just happened. This wasn't an argument, it was a shift in power, and she had just lost control of it. "This doesn't need to go any further," she said, finally, her voice measured, careful. "We can still handle this privately." Privately. I almost smiled. "That's exactly what you were counting on," I replied. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not what I meant." "It is," I said. "You just didn't expect me to notice." Ryan stepped forward again, his voice strained. "Mom, please," he said. "Let's just talk about this." Calmly, I looked at him, and for the first time since this began, I didn't see confidence. I saw uncertainty, fear, not of me, but of consequences. "You've had months to talk to me," I said. "You chose not to. That's not fair." He said again, though the words lacked the conviction they had before. "Then explain it to me," I said. "Explain the signatures, the accounts, the plans to sell my house." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Emily, then at Lauren, and for a moment, no one spoke. Because there was no explanation that didn't expose the truth. Emily broke first. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said, her voice shaking. I needed help." I turned to her. "What kind of help?" I asked. She wiped her face quickly, her breathing uneven. "My debt," she admitted. "It's worse than you think." Ryan looked at her, surprised. "Emily." "No," she said, cutting him off. "She deserves to know." That surprised me. Not because she was being honest, but because she was finally choosing to be. "I've been behind for months," she continued. "Credit cards, loans, everything. I kept thinking I could fix it, but I couldn't." My chest tightened. "And instead of asking me for help, I said you decided to take control of everything." "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "At first it was just small things. Moving money around, covering gaps. I thought I'd put it back before you noticed." The words echoed in my mind. "Before you noticed?" "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. "Almost a year." A year. The realization hit me harder than I expected. This hadn't started after Michael died. It had been happening before, while he was still alive, while we were still a family. I closed my eyes briefly, letting that settle. "And you?" I asked, turning to Ryan. He looked away. "I knew some of it," he admitted. "Not everything." "How much is some?" I pressed. His jaw tightened. "Enough," he said. That was answer enough. "And the rest?" I asked, glancing at Lauren. She didn't flinch. "I stepped in when it became clear things weren't being handled efficiently," she said. Efficiently. Even now, she chose that word. "You mean when you realized there was more to gain?" I said. Her lips pressed together. "That's not accurate," she replied. "It is," I said, silence again. But this time it felt different. Not tense, not explosive, just heavy, like everything had already been said. Ryan sat down slowly, his hands resting on his knees. "I didn't think it would get to this point," he said quietly. "No one ever does," I replied. Emily looked up at me, her eyes red, her expression desperate. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said. I believed her. That was the hardest part, because intention didn't erase impact. "You did," I said gently. She flinched. Ryan leaned forward slightly. "We can fix this," he said. "We'll pay everything back. We'll make it right." I studied him. For a moment I saw something real there. Regret. Not perfect, not complete, but real. "And what about the guardianship?" I asked. His expression shifted again. "That was just a precaution," he said. "No," I said, "that was control." He didn't argue, because he couldn't. Lauren stepped forward again, her voice firm. "If you pursue legal action, this will get messy," she said. "Public, complicated." I met her gaze. "That's not my concern anymore," I said. She held my eyes for a moment longer, then nodded slightly, as if confirming something to herself. "Then we're done here," she said. Ryan looked at her, Lauren, but she was already turning away, because she understood something the others didn't yet. This wasn't a situation she could manage anymore. Emily stood slowly, her movements uncertain. "Mom?" she began. I held up my hand. Not harshly, just enough to stop her. "I need time," I said. She nodded, tears slipping down her face again. "Okay," she whispered. Ryan stood as well. "I'll call you later," he said. I didn't respond, because I didn't know what that would mean yet. They left one by one, Lauren first, then Emily, Ryan last, and when the door finally closed behind them, The room was quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet as before. This time it felt earned. I leaned back against the bed, my body heavier than it had been all day. Not from weakness, from everything I had just carried through. Claire stepped in a few minutes later, her expression immediately searching. "Well," she asked. I looked at her. "It's done," I said. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Then now we move forward," she said. I exhaled slowly. "Yes," I replied. "Because this part, the confrontation, the truth, the breaking point, it was over. What came next would be something else entirely. Not reaction, not defense, but rebuilding, on my terms, for the first time in a long time." The first morning back in my house felt unfamiliar. Not because anything had changed physically. The same curtains hung by the windows, the same photographs lined the walls. Michael's favorite chair still sat in the corner of the living room, angled just slightly toward the television, like he had only stepped away for a moment. But something inside me had changed so completely that everything else felt different by comparison. I stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping in, not out of fear, but out of awareness. This house had been the center of my life for decades. Now it felt like a place I needed to reclaim. Ethan stood just behind me, quiet as always, giving me the space to take that first step. "You don't have to rush this," he said gently. I nodded. "I'm not," I replied, and I wasn't. Because for the first time I understood that moving forward didn't mean moving fast. It meant moving deliberately. The legal process began almost immediately. Margaret Collins, my attorney, was everything I needed her to be. Sharp, direct, uncompromising. She didn't waste time with sympathy or softened language. She looked at the documents, the evidence, the recordings, and told me exactly what I already knew. "This is a clear case of financial misconduct and attempted coercive control," she said. The words sounded clinical, detached, but they carried weight. "Can we prove it?" I asked. She met my eyes without hesitation. "Yes." That was all I needed to hear. From there, everything moved forward in a way that felt both fast and strangely controlled. Accounts were frozen. Access was revoked. Formal notices were sent, every step documented, every decision intentional. Ryan called me the first night. I let it ring, then again the next morning, and the next. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed distance, clarity, time to understand what I was willing to rebuild and what I wasn't. Emily didn't call, at least not at first, but I saw the messages, short at first, then longer, more emotional, more desperate. "I didn't mean for this to happen. Please talk to me. I don't know what to do." I read them, all of them, but I didn't respond. Because this wasn't something words could fix overnight. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. And patterns don't disappear just because someone regrets them. Lauren moved quickly. That didn't surprise me. Within days, she had separated herself from Ryan, at least publicly. Margaret explained it clearly. "She's protecting herself," she said, trying to create distance from the legal exposure. It made sense. Everything about Lauren had always been calculated, even now, especially now. Ryan, on the other hand, he unraveled. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small, visible ways. Margaret kept me informed not out of gossip, but because it was relevant. "He's cooperating," she said during one of our meetings. More than I expected. Why, I asked. She studied me for a moment. "Because he knows he crossed a line," she said, "and because he's afraid of what happens if he doesn't." Fear. It was a powerful motivator, but not the same as accountability. That took longer. Weeks passed. Then a month. The house began to feel like mine again, not because it had changed, but because I had. I rearranged things slowly, not out of necessity, but out of intention. Michael's chair stayed where it was. Some things didn't need to be moved to be understood differently. Ethan came by often. Not every day, not intrusively, just enough. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't, but his presence became something steady, reliable, in a way I hadn't realized I needed. "You're handling this better than most people would," he said one afternoon. I shook my head slightly. "I'm handling it the only way I can," I replied. He nodded. "That's usually the same thing." There was a quiet understanding between us now. not built on the past, but on what we had both seen and what we had both chosen to do with it. Emily came to see me first, unannounced. She stood on the front porch looking smaller than I remembered, not physically, but emotionally. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. She stepped inside slowly, her eyes moving around the room like she was seeing it differently too. "I'm not here to argue," she said, quickly, "or to ask for anything." I didn't respond, I just waited. Because this time, she needed to speak. "I've been going to counseling," she said. That surprised me. Not because I didn't think she needed it, but because I hadn't expected her to choose it. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning," she continued. "About everything, yes," I said. She flinched slightly. I was ashamed, she admitted, and scared, and I thought if I could just fix it quietly, you'd never have to know. I studied her, and for the first time in a long time, I saw honesty, not perfect, not complete, but real. "That's where it started," I said. She nodded. "And then it just kept going," she whispered, "because that's how patterns work. They don't begin as something big. They grow, piece by piece, decision by decision, until they become something you can't control anymore. I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. That mattered, more than anything else she could have said. "I'm asking for a chance to do better," she added. I let the silence sit between us for a moment, then I spoke. "That doesn't happen quickly," I said. "I know," she replied, "and it doesn't happen without consequences. I know that too." I nodded slowly. "Then we'll see," I said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. It was something in between. Something real. Ryan took longer. When he finally came, it was different. No rehearsed words, no controlled tone, just honesty. "I let it happen," he said. "No excuses, no deflection. I knew it was wrong," he added, and I told myself it was temporary, that I'd fix it later. I looked at him and I asked, and I didn't, he said. The simplicity of it hurt more than anything else, because it was true. "I don't expect you to trust me again," he continued. "Not right away. Maybe not ever." I didn't respond, because I didn't know yet. "I just want the chance to earn it," he said. I nodded slowly. "Then start with the truth," I said. "I am," he replied. And this time, I believed him. Not completely, not blindly, but enough. Months passed. The legal situation resolved in ways Margaret had predicted. Controlled, clear, final, not easy, but necessary. And through it all, I found something I hadn't realized I had lost. Myself. Not the version of me that existed before all of this. That woman had trusted too easily, had ignored too much, had believed that love alone could hold everything together. This version was different, stronger, clearer, not hardened, but aware. And that made all the difference. The first time I walked back into that hospital, it wasn't as a patient. It was on a quiet Tuesday morning, just after sunrise, when the building felt almost gentle, like it hadn't fully woken up yet. The same polished floors, the same sterile scent, the same muted sounds drifting from distant hallways. But this time I wasn't being wheeled in. I walked in on my own, steady, aware, and completely different from the woman who had woken up there weeks before, alone and confused, holding a folded note that would change everything. Claire was at the front desk when I arrived. She looked up, paused for a second, and then smiled in a way that felt genuine. Not polite, not professional, but real. "I was hoping I'd see you again," she said. "Me too," I replied. We stood there for a moment, both of us understanding that what had started in that hospital room hadn't ended there. It had followed me home, through every conversation, every decision, every truth I had to face. "I brought something for you," I said, reaching into my bag. She tilted her head slightly as I handed her a small envelope. "What is it?" she asked. "Not a warning," I said with a faint smile, "just a thank you." She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note, simple but intentional, because I understood now how much something small, something quiet could matter. Claire looked up, her eyes softer. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I did," I replied. "You gave me something I didn't even know I needed." She nodded slowly. "Truth has a way of doing that," she said. We talked for a while after that, not about the legal case, not about my children, but about the kind of work she did, the patients she saw, the families she dealt with, the moments that stayed with her long after her shift ended. "There are more situations like yours than people realize," she said. That didn't surprise me anymore. "People don't always recognize control when it's wrapped in concern," I replied. She gave me a knowing look. "No," she said, "they don't." Before I left, I walked past the room I had stayed in. The door was open, empty, quiet. I stood there for a moment remembering the silence, the confusion, the fear, and then the note. The moment everything shifted. I didn't stay long, because I didn't need to. That chapter of my life had already closed. What mattered now was what I had built after it. Ryan and I spoke regularly, not every day, not even every week, but consistently, carefully. Each conversation grounded in something real, no pretending, no avoiding, just truth. He was doing the work. I could see that. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but honestly. And that mattered. Emily took longer. Her path wasn't as steady. There were setbacks. Moments where she slipped back into old habits, deflecting, minimizing, avoiding. But she always came back. And slowly, very slowly. That began to mean something. I didn't rebuild my relationship with them the way it had been before. I couldn't, because that version had been built on things I could no longer ignore. Instead, I built something new, something with boundaries, with clarity, with space for both love and accountability. Ethan remained a constant in my life, not in a way that replaced anything, but in a way that added something I hadn't realized was missing: honesty, directness, a kind of quiet loyalty that didn't require explanation. One afternoon, we visited Michael's grave together. It wasn't planned, it just happened. We stood there in silence for a long time. "I wish he had told you sooner," Ethan said finally. "So do I replied. I looked down at the name carved into the stone, at the man I had loved for 40 years, the man who had protected me even in ways I didn't understand at the time. "He tried," I said softly, "in the only way he knew how." Ethan nodded. "That sounds like him." I let out a small breath. I was angry at him, I admitted, for not telling me everything. And now Ethan asked. I thought about it, about the letter, the video, the plan he had put in place. "I understand him," I said. That didn't erase everything, but it changed it, and sometimes that was enough. Before we left, I reached into my bag and pulled out the last letter Michael had written, the one I had read so many times I could almost recite it from memory. "There's a line in here," I said, my voice quiet. I didn't really understand it at first. Ethan looked at me. "What is it?" he asked. I unfolded the paper slowly, then read it aloud. "Love without truth becomes a place where betrayal can live unnoticed." The words settled into the air around us, still unavoidable. "That's what happened," I said. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't need to, because we both knew it was true. I folded the letter again, holding it for a moment before placing it back in my bag. I used to think being left alone in that hospital room was the worst thing that could have happened to me, I said. Ethan glanced at me, and now he asked. I met his eyes. Now I think it was the moment everything became clear, because that silence, that emptiness, it had stripped everything down to the truth. No distractions, no comfort, no illusions, just reality. And sometimes, that's what it takes. Not something dramatic, not something loud, but something quiet enough that you can finally hear what's been there all along. We walked back to the car in silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything that mattered had already been understood. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. And that was enough. What I learned from all of this didn't come all at once. It came slowly, through silence, through pain, through moments where I had to face truths I would have once avoided. I learned that love by itself isn't always safe, that without honesty, without boundaries, without the courage to question what doesn't feel right, love can become something else entirely. Something that hides things, something that excuses things, something that allows betrayal to grow quietly unnoticed until it's too late. I also learned that instinct matters, that quiet voice inside you that says something isn't right. It's there for a reason, and ignoring it doesn't make the truth disappear. It just delays the moment you have to face it. If you've ever been in a situation where something didn't feel right, but you couldn't explain why, I want you to trust that feeling. You don't need proof to pause. You don't need permission to protect yourself. And you don't need to feel guilty for choosing clarity over comfort. So I want to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have signed the papers? Would you have trusted your family without question? Or would you have stopped and asked why? Tell me in the comments. And if this story resonated with you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe, because there are so many stories like this that need to be told, and I'd love to hear yours too.